Good morning, everyone. Here's your Mormon news update for August 12th, 2025. My first note today is that I was summoned to jury duty this week, so I'm going to do my best to do updates, but I have no idea what my schedule is going to look like. Now we will go to LDS Living for this information. A new church news video titled Guidance from the Lord features Elder Quentin L. Cook talking about the importance of temples and prophets. The footage comes from early June when Elder Cook accompanied President Russell M. Nelson to the dedication of the Syracuse, Utah temple. A clip in the video shows President Nelson in the passenger seat of a car as it pulls out of the temple parking lot. A group of people is gathered on the side of the road, and as President Nelson's car goes past, he can be heard saying out the open window, "I love you all." Here is a portion of that video.
And to have him be able to dedicate this one, I think is very special. I love you all. Wasn't the prophet amazing? He brought me to tears.
Because Russell is the prophet of the one and only true church, I would assume he loves the way that God does, which in his own words is, from his February 2003 speech, Divine Love, perfect, infinite, enduring, and universal, but not unconditional. Which essentially means that Russell loves those people only when certain conditions are met by them. His love for them is contingent on specific behaviors, achievements, or qualities, and his love can be withdrawn or diminished if the conditions are not met. Now let's go to the ex-Mormon subreddit for this fun bit of information. Well, folks, it happened. Selena Gomez is engaged. As a teenager, I had several dreams where I converted her to Mormonism and then married her, obviously. As a hardcore teenage TBM, I believed this recurring dream was personal revelation, and it was my calling to convert her, who would in turn convert millions. But now that she's engaged to someone else, part of that revelation won't be fulfilled. I'm starting to think maybe this dream was just a dream, or maybe the church isn't true, or both. My wife says I only have a couple more days to mourn about this before I have to move on and be her husband again. Please send your condolences or share any other funny, failed personal revelations of your own. Fine. I'll share. This is embarrassing, but when I was 14, I got my patriarchal blessing. One of the lines in it is, "Later in your life, you will be a leader among women in the church." Whenever I would reread the blessing, I would feel the Spirit tell me so strongly that that particular line meant that I was going to be part of the Young Women General Presidency someday, and that I was going to speak in General Conference. Part of my General Conference talk was going to be reciting the Young Women theme and focusing on the part that talks about being a daughter of heavenly parents. I was so sure that this was revelation and was going to happen. Obviously, I had no idea how people are called into top leadership positions in the church, and that poor no-name me was never going to be considered for general leadership. What is your most embarrassing failed personal revelation? I must know. Now let's go to AFR.com, where it says Nationals leader David Littleproud has called for changes to the Australia-US Free Trade Agreement following a spending spree by the US Mormon Church in which almost $500 million worth of Australian farmland fell into foreign ownership in little more than 6 months. In August last year, the US Church-owned farmland reserves bought Worrell Creek Aggregation for $350 million. In March this year, it paid $68 million for the North Star Aggregation. And in April, it bought Kentucky Farms at Forbes for $38 million and Carnarvon Aggregation at Gunnedah for $32 million. Sources told the AFR Weekend that Farmland Reserve has agents looking for more large Australian farms to buy. None of these sales were subject to scrutiny from the Foreign Investment Review Board because the AUSFTA, signed in 2004 by former Nationals leader Mark Vaile, gives U.S. investors and those from New Zealand and Chile an almost unfettered right to buy Australian farmland. Buyers from the U.S. can purchase farming ventures up to a value of $1.46 billion per venture, and there is a fear within the Australian farming community that the Mormons, with billions of dollars to spend, could change the face of Australian agriculture. I think they have every right and reason to be fearful. The article goes on to say, Little Proud told AFR Weekend that we need to revisit these parameters of the free trade agreement with the U.S. I don't think it was the intent of the original agreement that we'd ever envisage that an organization would take such a large slice of agricultural land in this country, he said. This allows them, the Mormons, who have significant capital backing, to outcompete Australian farming families, he said. It's totally unacceptable that a foreign entity emboldened by significant tax advantages should be allowed to accumulate significant volumes of farmland and cannibalize Australia's food-producing capacity, he said. The Mormon Church has way too much power, not only in the U.S., but apparently also in Australia. Now let's go to the Utah subreddit for this post that says, Rude missionaries ignoring wishes to be left alone. A few years ago, we put up a big sign on our front door that asks for no sales and no proselytizing. Without fail, we get a knock on our door every month from missionaries asking if we are interested in or have heard of the church. We live between like 6 meeting houses and 2 McTemples down the street. Of course we know about the church. We aren't interested. Even door-to-door salespeople are respectful of our wishes to be left alone. 2 questions. What motivates the missionaries to ignore our explicit written requests not to be bothered? Self-righteousness? Sales quotas? Illiteracy? What is the procedure for getting missionaries to stop contacting us for good? Personally, I haven't lived in Utah for over 10 years, and I never lived there as an ex or never Mormon, so I don't even know what this would be like. In all of my years outside of the church, I've only had LDS missionaries stop by unannounced 1 time. What are your thoughts on this post? Now we're going to go to the church newsroom for this information. From various stages to watch parties around the world, Latter-day Saint youth and friends are participating this year in Festival, a youth concert, spiritual and unifying celebrations of faith in Jesus Christ, expressed through worship music. The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints has encouraged areas worldwide to provide youth with an opportunity to gather to watch and sing along to featured songs from recent Strive to Be albums and singles. A difference this year from 2024 was the offering of one of 3 options for adult and youth leaders involved in planning local events to select. Use one of the pre-recorded concerts filmed in the US, Mexico, and Brazil, put on their own concert using local singers to perform the same songs, or create their own music event. The idea that the Mormon Church is now hosting and encouraging Christian rock concerts is still so wild to me. If they are trying to appear more mainstream Christian, though, I can see how that would be a logical step for them. I recently started watching the 2nd season of Shiny Happy People, which so far has focused on the Christian rock concerts used to indoctrinate their youth. There also was a quick shout out to ex-Mormons, which I will play.
Oh my word, social media just exploded. All of these people that were not into IBLP craziness could relate in some way. I need you to understand that this is the tip of the iceberg.
Back to the Mormon Church trying to appear more mainstream, though. The church has made a concerted effort to appear more aligned with mainstream Christianity in recent years, particularly under the leadership of President Russell M. Nelson. This shift is most evident in its public relations, terminology, and messaging. For me, this all started with the widely publicized effort to discourage the use of the nicknames Mormon and LDS. In 2018, President Nelson stated that the Lord had impressed upon his mind the importance of the name he decreed for his church, even the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. The change was presented as a matter of divine instruction to place Jesus Christ at the center of the faith's identity, thereby connecting it more directly to other Christian denominations. This public push for the full name has been a major component of the church's rebranding efforts. The church has also strategically refocused its public messaging and materials on Jesus Christ. While the Book of Mormon and the faith's unique history are still foundational, public relations campaigns, official websites, and new media content increasingly highlight Christ-centered themes. For instance, the Book of Mormon's subtitle, Another Testament of Jesus Christ, is often emphasized in new branding to clarify its role as a companion to the Bible. The church has also released a new hymn book that includes popular hymns from other Christian traditions, such as Amazing Grace and This Little Light of Mine. The Mormon Church has also taken steps to downplay some of its more distinctive doctrines in public settings. While core beliefs like the Godhead, continuing revelation, and the Book of Mormon remain, the public discourse from church leaders and official publications tends to emphasize points of agreement with other Christians. This includes a shared belief in Jesus Christ's atonement, the importance of the Bible, and a commitment to Christian values. All of these subtle and continuous changes can be seen in the huge array of social media ads the church sponsors as well. LDS missionaries dressed more casually, asking if you're lonely and need someone to sit by at church, never mentioning which church they represent. LDS influencers being paid to bear their testimonies online, while expressly being forbidden from saying LDS or Mormon. Christian rock concerts for teens is just all part of the new branding that the Mormon Church is awesome and fun and just as good an option as any other Christian church. Now let's watch and discuss a video from Miss Maggie Jessie on TikTok. She is commenting on Lindsey Stirling's video where, as a reminder, Lindsey said, "People love to speculate whether I'm still Mormon. On paper, it may seem like I'm not anymore because I actively support the LGBTQ+ community. I wear sleeveless shirts sometimes, and now she drinks coffee. For way too long, I defined my connection to God by a huge list of rules, and that led to so much shame. I don't let shame govern me anymore, and surprisingly, I've felt God's love more than ever. The fact is, I love my Mormon faith upbringing and the connection with God it gives me. I also love all the beautiful things I've learned from other religions. I think God gives truth everywhere. So y'all will just have to keep speculating and gossiping about whether or not I'm still Mormon, because my coffee and I aren't going to tell you."
And she's wonderful. I know her personally, and she's a wonderful, kind human. And so this is no judgment on her, but...
Oh no. She's already off to a rocky start. Saying she's a great person and then saying "but" creates an implicit contradiction. The human brain tends to focus on the information that follows a conjunction of contrast. When she said, "She's a wonderful, kind human, but," the brain instinctively braces for the criticism or condition that will follow, making whoever is listening to this TikTok forget or discount the loving statement. Doing this is often used as a way to try and soften a blow, but it can actually make the blow more painful because it's delivered under the guise of affection. The initial compliment is essentially canceled out, turning what could have been a positive interaction into a negative one.
I want to bring up a point. She says that she's happier because she doesn't feel shame anymore. I can relate because when I was at my darkest, I had to question, was the church true? Because that's where I felt the most shame. I was doing things that were contrary to what we believe in the church. And because of that, I felt shame. So I had to learn if it was true.
Miss Maggie's response so far fundamentally misinterprets Lindsey's original message about shame and personal growth by projecting a different, almost opposite experience onto Lindsey. Lindsey's story is one of spiritual expansion and finding a deeper connection with God by letting go of shame. In contrast, Miss Maggie presents a story where shame was the catalyst for questioning the church's truthfulness. Miss Maggie felt shame from breaking the rules, and this led her to question the church. She does not share Lindsey's conclusion that moving past shame led to a stronger feeling of God's love, and yet she is trying to empathize with Lindsey, saying essentially, "I've been there too," when she hasn't.
And through my study, and I started with getting to know Jesus. And through that study, it brought me closer, and it made it easy to give up anything and everything for him.
And you know what, Miss Maggie? That's awesome for you. If you studied and you feel like there are things you want to give up for Jesus, do it. It's also awesome if Lindsey came to a different conclusion.
And so when it comes to the word of wisdom, though it does I think that's the beauty of God, is he does bless us through following his commandments. That's not the point. I feel like the bigger point of the word of wisdom is having obedience.
Here she is using obedience as a rhetorical device to avoid discussing inconsistencies and a lack of clear rationale for the rule. By focusing on obedience, Miss Maggie is essentially saying that the rule doesn't need to make sense in a scientific or worldly context. The sense of the rule is found in the spiritual reward for following it. The word of wisdom's prohibition on substances like coffee and tea is often debated from a health perspective. Simply saying it's about obedience is an attempt to make that entire debate irrelevant, because for Miss Maggie, the rule's validity is grounded in spiritual authority, not scientific evidence. This explanation also comes across as dismissive. Miss Maggie is implying that the reasons for the rule are not meant to be understood, and if Lindsey were faithful enough, she'd just do what she was told.
So it comes to this. If Jesus Christ asked you to give up something, no matter what it was, wouldn't you do it? And that's where faith to move mountains becomes possible.
Here's the first problem. She says Jesus Christ, assuming that he is the one who wrote the word of wisdom. She is claiming that Jesus, the co-creator of the universe, wrote essentially the following: caffeinated sodas are okay, but coffee and tea are forbidden because Mormon texts discourage hot drinks. It's not about caffeine. But hot chocolate is okay despite being hot, because hot drinks really means brewed drinks. Iced tea and iced coffee are forbidden despite being cold because they are brewed. But herbal teas, hot or iced, are okay despite being brewed because there is no caffeine. Didn't follow that? Me neither. Jesus needs to up his "this is forbidden" game. The second big problem I see with her statement is her appeal for unwavering obedience, which can be dangerous because it requires the complete suspension of her personal judgment, critical thinking, and moral compass. While obedience is necessary for a functional society, blind submission to authority can lead to profound harm.
As I went on my journey and found out this church is true, and it was so easy to give up everything and anything for God. And I did. And I still would. And I testify that if Christ were to ask me to give up everything that I love right now, including my husband and my children, which are so precious to me, if he asked me, just like Abraham was asked to sacrifice his son, I would.
And here we have it showcased. She just admitted publicly that she would kill her husband and children if she thought God or Jesus told her to.
Because I love Jesus Christ. And I say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Miss Maggie was trying to use her testimony to shame Lindsey into making the same decisions that Maggie has made. Maggie is conditioned to believe that the Mormon authority figures have all the answers, and she now believes that the only way Lindsey can be happy is to believe the same way that Maggie does. And on that note, let's finish today with this thought-provoking quote that says, "Prayer, because I already know what you want, I just want to hear you beg." Signed, God. And that's your update for today, folks. I absolutely hope you have the day that you deserve.